The year is 1943. You are an average German citizen for the last few years. Life has been pretty tough. The war isn't going well. You haven't seen your son in over a year because he went off to fight in Russia and you haven't heard from him since. Your house is surrounded by Allied bombers and things are getting pretty tense. Your apartment is starting to run low on food and your next meal is starting to look less and less certain. All of this is probably going to be over soon. But for now, you need something to eat. So you go downstairs to the community kitchen for some badly prepared potatoes and maybe a piece of bread if you're lucky. It's not much, but it'll keep you alive. This is what you have for dinner. Tomorrow might be different, but today you survived. Now imagine that again, except this time in 1793, 1609, or even back in 1298. History is filled with people just like you who are going to bed hungry. But why? If we are the most technologically advanced species to ever grace this planet, how do we keep messing up so badly when it comes to food? Today we're going to talk about how hunger has brought down empires before and how it may just do it again in the future. This is a special episode on food and hunger and how it can bring down civilizations. Let's jump in. Ancient Egypt was one of the first great empires in human history. With its impressive pyramids and monumental statues, it looked like it would have been a great place to live. In reality, though, it was often more Hunger Games than Club Med. The pharaohs ruled over their subjects with an iron fist and forced peasants into servitude to build their lavish palaces and giant tombs. While these works of engineering still stand today, life for the commoner was pretty harsh. The Nile River had a tendency of flooding and destroying crops, forcing people into famine. When the crops failed, everybody suffered. The royal family would isolate themselves in their palaces and hope the disaster would pass them by. Most of the time it didn't. There were periods of plenty, sure, but there were also times where Egyptians could only eat every other day, and when they did eat, their meals consisted of watery gruel made from stale bread. Sometimes the government would attempt to fix this problem by limiting how much grain each household could buy. This sounds like a great idea until you realize that the main source of calories in Egyptian cuisine was bread. So yeah, that didn't really help. The economy started to tank because grain exports fell. Then the people got angrier and the empire started to fall apart. The once proud nation was now ruled by foreign invaders and life was even worse. Famine followed the Egyptians throughout their history and eventually led to their demise. You don't have to travel all the way back to ancient Egypt to find people going hungry, though. In 16th century France, King Henry IV was known as the Green King due to his extremely pro-monarchist policies. He believed that kings should be absolutely in control of everything in their nation, including the food. After one particularly bad harvest, Henry decided to stockpile grain and set the price so that people couldn't afford it. Of course, this backfired. People became too hungry to work and productivity plummeted. Eventually, Henry realized he needed to feed his people or else they would get too angry and storm Paris. As we said before, that is exactly what happened. Angry citizens stormed Paris, tore down the king's statue, and beheaded him. Not literally, of course. He died of natural causes a little while later. But still, the people won and the monarchy lost. But monarchs aren't always the ones to blame for widespread hunger. In the 19th century, American settlers moved west and started farming the Great Plains. At first, this seemed like a great idea. The land was free, the climate was comfortable, and there was lots of rain. This made it perfect for growing wheat. Soon, farms were popping up everywhere, and the U.S. became one of the largest exporters of wheat in the world. But then something changed. The rain stopped and a massive drought descended upon the region. Without water, the wheat withered and died and the farmers had nothing to export. Suddenly, America wasn't making money on wheat anymore. A Great Depression hit farmers especially hard. When they weren't able to pay their loans, banks took their farms and kicked them off the land they had worked so hard to cultivate. Many of these farmers were already poor, and the dust storms that ravaged the region at the time didn't help. They were forced to abandon their homes and move to cities where they could work odd jobs to survive. Over 100 years later, the American heartland still hasn't recovered. Sometimes hunger strikes at the worst possible moment. In 1943, World War II was raging across Europe and Asia. Germany was pushing deep into Russia and soldiers from around the world were dying daily, but something strange was happening. The German army was running out of food. Hitler thought he had planned perfectly, but his strategy relied on conquering Russia quickly. Now that his army was stuck in a long and bloody war, they were starting to starve. In response, Hitler began targeting food supplies in areas his troops were occupying, causing widespread starvation among the civilian population. This led to protests and eventually full-scale rebellion. As German morale collapsed, the war turned against them and food shortages forced civilians and soldiers to flee the country en masse. As Germany collapsed, its people became refugees in their own homeland, and sometimes hunger could strike even when there's plenty of food to go around. In 1866, an Irish potato blight killed nearly half of all potatoes planted in Ireland. This would have been bad no matter what, but the Irish people were dependent on potatoes for their nutrition. The potato was cheap, grew easily in the climate, and could be stored for a long time. Unfortunately, it's also very easy to overplant and overharvest, which means the soil becomes depleted of nutrients and disease can spread quickly. With their main source of nutrition gone, the Irish had nothing left to eat. Starvation and disease struck everywhere, and people began to die en masse. 1 million people would perish in Ireland that year, most of them civilians. This caused an economic collapse in Ireland and many people to immigrate to the United States, where they were welcomed with open arms and lots of food. In modern times, the threat of famine is hanging over us once again. In recent years, extreme weather has led to crop failures around the world. At the same time, our demand for food is higher than ever, but with new innovations in agriculture, we should be able to feed everyone on the planet. Right now, though, there's a global food crisis. Supplies are dwindling and prices are rising fast, and experts predict that this will only get worse in the future. There's a real possibility that a global food shortage could lead to total chaos, and when that happens, we might look back on this time and wonder why we didn't see it coming. So now you know why so many empires have fallen before and what might happen in the future. If we don't watch out, do you think food shortages will lead to the downfall of the modern world? Will we be fighting over scraps in the street like it's Mad Max? Or will we come together and share what little food we have? Only time will tell. Until next time.